Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of Pro Wrestling Defined. I'm Jonathan O'Dwyer, and special guest on the show today, very good friend of mine. He runs the Captain's Corner virtual signings on the Captain's Corner Facebook page. He's had tons of great guests on there, and a lot of them are draped out in my background here. He's got a bunch of awesome signings coming up, and we're going to talk about that and starting the Captain's Corner virtual signing. So without further ado, Nicholas Masci, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Jonathan. Thank you for having me on here. I've watched a bunch of your recent interviews with Solomon Grundy and Brian Clark, and it's an honor to be in the company of those great men. So looking forward to the next hour or so.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, man. No, it's awesome. Like, especially like, I've been rating your stuff with the last 6 months or so. So
Yeah.
It's cool to have everything here. And your signings are absolutely awesome. Like, you have awesome guests on. So we'll get into that. Talk about the ones you have coming up over the next few weeks. You have some great names coming up. Talk about who you have coming up on the Captain's Corner.
So we're going. The goal for 2021 was going to have I call it the quest for 60. I want 60 unique virtual guests in the year, and I'm well on my way to that. I think by the start of April, I had 21 or 22, and then April's a very big month. We finished up recently with the Killer Bees and Mr. Hughes. Those are our first 3 guests for April. Coming up, we've got Charlie Norris on Thursday, April 22nd. Not sure. Thursday, April 15th. Not sure if this is going to go live, Jonathan, or if it's going to be a tape. But Charlie Norris on Thursday the 15th. The 16th is Florida wrestling legend Scott McGee, who was in the first Starrcade. Both of those are rare signings. Those guys don't come around and do a lot. So I know a lot of people that follow Captain's Corner are a fan of the rare signings, and those are 2 of the more rare signings that you'll come across. And then Saturday, I got the double virtual happy hour, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time and 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Tatanka and Manny Fernandez. So that's Charlie Norris, Scott McGee on Thursday and Friday, Manny Fernandez and Tatanka on Saturday. And then next week, I got Scott Casey on Thursday, April 22nd. April 23rd is NWO Sting, Jeff Farmer, and Ronnie Garvin is Saturday, April 24th. So I got 7 guests in about the next 8 or 9 days. So I'll be pretty busy on my end.
Yeah, gosh, geez, that's some schedule. Like you bombed them up, and that's brilliant. Some great guests there. It's cool actually because the very first time I actually ever saw WCW, the first time I ever watched it, I didn't get it till like '99, and till summer of '99. And the first time I saw it, like Kevin Nash and Sting were in a storyline. They were kind of friends at the time or something like that. And Sid was against Nash, and Jeff Farmer ended up coming out in the at the end of it. Yeah, the NWO thing. That's cool. I just remembered that the other day. Yeah, that's the very first time I saw it. Like, he was the first one, and like Nash ended up power bombing the real Sting, thinking it was the NWO thing. Yeah, so that was a cool.
I never even saw that. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's somewhere in '99. It's about July or something like that. Yeah, I'll send you the clip.
Please, absolutely.
That's cool. Yeah, so he's a really cool guest to have on. Yes. Like, that's one thing that I like about your signings is you really think outside of the box with them, and so that's great. And Tatanka, Scott Casey, they're all great. So I've met Tatanka actually a couple of times myself. He was over here in 2008. And I met him in Manchester. I think it was even the same year, but it's funny, when he was over here in 2008, he was in Cork. And I'd say I held up the queue for about half an hour talking to him.
Really?
Yeah. Because like, I still had plans on I hadn't fully accepted the fact that I couldn't become a wrestler myself at that point. So I was still planning on getting into the business. And he was giving me loads of advice. Just a super nice guy. Like,
I'm sure.
Absolutely awesome guy. Like, so, yeah, so they're really awesome guests. So talk about starting off Captain's Corner. Like, you were obviously a big wrestling fan yourself through the years. Yeah. Talk about your fandom and how it led you to getting into the signing business.
Well, so some of my earliest television memories involve wrestling. My father was a huge fan. He went to the Shea Stadium show. So I was born and raised in New York. My father relocated to New York, pretty early in his life. But one of his favorite wrestling memories was he went to the 1980 Shea Stadium show in August. Larry Zbyszko and Bruno Sammartino, which was one of the the biggest matches of that entire decade, biggest matches in wrestling history. So my father was a hardcore wrestling fan, so he also loved other professional sports. Like I'm a huge boxing fan, I'm a huge basketball fan, but wrestling was the first sport that connected to me as a kid. So my first memory of TV, WWF TV, was 1987. I would have been about 3 years old when Strike Force beat the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles.
Oh
And
wow, that's cool.
there's so many other things I'm sure that were big that happened before that, but one of my first memories in general is that tag team title change. So I've been a fan of wrestling as long as I remember. I'm not a big fan of the current product, but that's a story for another day. But and even now, at the end of the day, if I'm able to lay down and unwind, there's a good chance that I'm putting on some kind of old school wrestling, just as I get tired. So
Yeah.
I was a fan for the longest time, about 8 or 9 years. I guess 2000, 2010, 2011. Right when we were having our first child, Dylan, we were looking to kind of free up some space, and I had a whole lot of wrestling stuff, old magazines, old videos, old DVDs, and we came up with the idea in order to make some space and also bring in a little extra money. I was going to rent a table at a convention coming up, and it was going to go like that. So I rented a table at a convention. It was November of 2011, which was actually 2 months after my son was born, and the show got canceled. So I had everything ready. I had all the magazines cataloged on my DVDs because back then, DVD burning was the big thing. I don't know if you remember, Jonathan.
Oh
That
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that was a big craze at the time. So I had hundreds of DVDs burnt, like lots of cool old school stuff. Shoot interviews are big stuff I didn't have the rights to, but also some original DVDs too, though, and original VHS and hundreds of magazines. Anyway, so that got rescheduled until June of 2012, and that was when I first made my first convention appearance as I guess a vendor. Because before that, I had been there as a fan. Growing up in the New York area, we're fortunate in that I know you guys get a couple of big conventions over there, but we were pretty blessed in that we were getting, even in the 2010, 11, 2009, we're still getting 2 or 3 wrestling conventions here in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So I jumped on one of them and started working for Legends of the Ring in 2012. I worked a couple of shows between 2012 and 2015, just selling my magazines, DVDs, things like that. Didn't bring in any talent. And then I sold a lot of stuff. And then before I knew it, it was actually my wife's idea. She was the one that was like, now that we're selling all this stuff, you may want to look into, bringing in one of the wrestlers. So I started. My first guest was Shane Douglas at a Jersey All Pro show in 2015. And then my first 2 conventions guests the following year, Legends of the Ring, were actually Sam Houston and Joey Styles. I had,
Wow.
yeah. So, and then from there, you brought up earlier how I love bringing in the rare guests. The way I used to book a lot of my talent now, because it's bigger, and that the audience is not just people in the tri-state area or in the Northeast. Now I've got lots of people that follow me, like yourself and the UK Mafia, and people in Canada and even places in the States that I've never been to. Nebraska, the Dakotas. So now it's whereas someone used to bring in a Jake the Snake or Tito Santana, to the conventions yearly up here. I was bringing in guys that were never brought in. So like a Sam Houston would go 4, 5, 6 years without making an appearance up here. Same thing like a Scott Casey, like Al Perez, guys like that. And those guys are guys that I'm a huge fan of because I grew up old school. I grew up with 1988, 89 Jim Crockett Promotions, turning to WCW, and then World Class was the third promotion I saw on TV on ESPN. My grandparents got cable. So those are typically the guests that I specialized in booking. But now, because the reach is different, and if I'm doing 60 guests a year, they can't all be rare. So now I've been fortunate, and I've worked with guests for the last couple of years, like Sergeant Slaughter, Lex Luger, Tatanka. I've worked with before. I'm working with again. And then I'm also able to sprinkle in, a little nostalgia by bringing Scott Casey next week, Charlie Norris and Scott McGee this week, Black Bart, guys like that. But so I've been working with talent now for about 6 years. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, been as far west as Texas, as far south as Florida, in the Carolinas. So I've worked a lot of different states, but I'm having the most fun doing the virtual signings over the last 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, they're brilliant, and like you were saying, like you have such a reach with those as well. I mean, like I'm over here in Ireland, like so like and you have like the likes of Paul Fraser over in England and the UK Mafia,
Yeah,
as you were saying.
shout out to Flash Fraser.
Yeah, shout out to Paul
I call,
Fraser. Yeah,
I call
he
Flash.
liked that. He likes the shout outs.
Well, and he created the inaugural Captain's Corner Hall of Fame class with the initial inductee was Jumpin' Jim Brunzell. Just a couple of weeks ago on the live chat, somehow I don't remember how it came up, but it was his idea to come up with the Captain's Corner Hall of Fame, and Jim Brunzell was the inaugural inductee. So thank you for the idea, Paul.
Oh, that's super cool, man. That's super cool. But speaking of Scott Casey, who you were talking about a little bit ago, you helped write his book with him as well.
Yes.
Talk about that whole process.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was a process. Now, Scott was someone like the names I mentioned earlier that I brought up for a weekend of signings. And Scott was someone else. He hadn't done anything in about 5 years. At the time, he had just relocated to Florida from Vegas. He was in Vegas for about 20 years. And what a lot of people don't know, and they can find out in One Last Ride, available on Blurb or the Captain's Corner Facebook, is that Scott actually was training people in Vegas for a while. And he was training people in Texas for a while too. Like he helped Ivan Putski. He was doing a lot of the legwork in Ivan Putski's school when he broke in Booker T and Stevie Ray. He helped Kenny King out in Vegas. Kenny King, ROH former tag team champ. Yep. I think he held some titles in Impact too. So Scott was training people on there, but he wasn't really doing a lot besides that. So I brought him up to a signing, and after I brought him up to a signing, unfortunately, Scott suffered a very severe heart attack, and he had to have quadruple bypass surgery. So, and it came out of nowhere. He was in great health. He had never had any health issues, and he had this heart attack where it didn't look like he was going to make it. And, he kicked out, he pulled through, and we spoke a few weeks later just about what he had been through in the last couple of weeks. And he was and rightfully so, at like a bit of a lull in his life. And we were talking, and I felt bad for Scott because Scott had an amazing career in the 1970s, 1980s. A lot of people know him just from his time working for the WWF. He had that big pay-per-view appearance, Survivor Series 88. And, he had WrestleFest 88, and he was on a bunch of house shows and TV shows for Vince. But Scott was, selling out arenas all over the state of Texas for every territory in the state of Texas. Amarillo, for Von Erichs in Dallas, for Joe Blanchard in San Antonio. And, he held titles in Kansas City. He went to Memphis. He went to All Japan for Baba. So we were talking, and it felt like Scott doesn't have any children. And it felt like I felt bad if someone like Scott's story wasn't told, because Vince McMahon, he does a great job of telling stories. So everyone will know about the Undertaker story and Triple H's story and HBK's story, but they're not going to know about Scott Casey's story.
Yeah.
And I felt that was something that, because Scott didn't have any children, and it was always an interest of mine. I've always loved reading and writing as well, to be involved in a wrestling book, and everything kind of fell into place. I was at a slow time with my full-time job, and it probably wasn't slow. I probably just took on an extra thing on my plate, but I know that Scott needed it. So we got the book done about 10 months, which is fairly quickly for a book. But I mean, me and Scott were talking 8 to 10 hours a week, and I was working about 10 to 20 hours a week on the book. So we were able to bang it out pretty quickly, and we were able to debut it April 7th, 2019, the same day as the first convention that I ever threw with a couple of partners. It was called Mark Out the Meadowlands, and it was the same day as WrestleMania at Giant Stadium. So it was about a mile down the road from WrestleMania. We had JR as our headliner. We had Stan Hansen, Tully Blanchard, Dan Spivey, a lot of great guests. But that was the first day where we were able to launch One Last Ride, the tale of Cowboy Scott Casey. So that date, and something that was already special it was even more special that we were able to kind of print it and get it released for the same date of my first convention. So we were really excited about that. And in 2019, we like I was saying earlier, we went to Florida, we went to Texas, we went to the Carolinas. We went to everywhere up here, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. We did all the stops, and we had plans to do full tours in the state of Texas last year, right before the pandemic happened. That kind of slowed us down a little bit. So I'm excited. I haven't seen Scott now in a year and a half. We talk every day, but we'll be together doing the virtual signing Thursday the 22nd. We've got a public signing the 24th in Queens, New York. So it's good that things are slowly starting to open up on this side of the pond, and it's not what it was. Obviously not everyone's gotten the shots, and not everyone feels comfortable enough to travel. But slowly but surely we're getting where we need to be.
Yeah, it's really slow over here. Like the vaccine rollout over here has just been pathetic up to now. Like, so we're still really restricted. Like, it's like we're still under like a 5. It's eased a little bit, but like for the most part, we're under like a 5 kilometer travel restriction. So
Really?
like yeah. It's
Wow.
they don't necessarily enforce it, very strictly or anything like, but like it is, officially on the cards, so like if you did get it and you got cut out or whatever, like, I'm not entirely sure what that would entail, like a fine or something like that, but it's starting to ease a little bit, like, but
that's good.
That's one of the reasons why the virtuals have been so good throughout this whole thing, like, it's just, with everything going on, like, they've just been a big, a nice distraction, we'll say. But,
yeah, no, I was saying, not to cut you off, Jonathan, but yeah, a lot of the international customers were saying just that how beneficial it is, because I know, I don't know if there's been much of a local scene, but I know a lot of the international names haven't been able to come over there for the last 18 months now because of, the pandemic. So yeah, it's been beneficial in that, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm having signings every week. So everyone that spends some time in my chat or sends me a note means so much, honestly. And then the customers that are consistent and that are always giving me positive feedback, that means even more. So the fact that, like you said, the virtuals have been a way for you kind of to be distracted and kind of still get the excitement of the meet and greets in a world where we can't really do that. That's great to hear, and I've heard it before, but it's always great hearing it.
And it makes for great decor from my background then as well.
It does. Is that Sting and Taker in between the TA figure and the baby doll Sam Houston duel?
Yeah, that's from Liverpool when they were both over there. Yeah, that's one of my. That was always my dream match, Sting and Taker, because Taker was my WWE guy and Sting was my WCW guy. Like, so that's one of the holy grails of my collection. Like, yeah.
I don't blame you. That's a great piece. That would have been a great match if it ever happened.
Oh, such a shame. Even if they'd just done like the cinematic version or just something, even just a square off to see them, face to face.
Yeah, like a face to face would have been cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's just left up to our imaginations now. But so talk about any good stories that kind of come to mind with some of the signings you've done, whether the virtual ones or the in-person meet and greets that you've done. Like, you've had so many great guests on. Like, so talk about any good stories you got.
I've got a lot of stories. Some stories I can't tell, but
I'd say that.
But what I like about the virtual is that it's very personal. Like you were saying, you when you met Tatanka, you were able to talk to him for a half hour, which was amazing. But there's a lot of situations where meet and greets are 30 seconds long, and sometimes that's the high end, because there's a big line, or because, let's face it, sometimes, I remember meeting wrestlers for the first time too. As a fan, you get uncomfortable sometimes going up to them, or you don't know what to say. So the environment of being able to ask a question, it's pretty cool, and that it allows you maybe even more access, not physically, but mentally, and a question and answer way than you would have at a normal signing. Because I have someone like a Magnum TA in there, and we're doing signings, obviously, and we're getting some stuff done. But a lot of people are able to ask him questions, and he's able to thank everyone, and it's really cool. And that it's not just a meet and greet; it's also like a Q&A to some extent too. So and I love everyone I've had on. I'm such a big fan of wrestling. I don't prepare at all. So I know enough about Black Bart's career where if we have 30 seconds of time in between signing autographs and I need to get up and get something, or I want to get an answer to something, I'll know exactly what to ask. So if for some reason, I always go to the questions, but if we answered all the questions, I'll know exactly what to ask them. That it might lead to an interesting story. It might not, but it might.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I've had such a good time though. The conventions are and were great too, and I know they'll on our side they're going to be coming back. We had our first convention in a highly populated area in March. I wasn't able to make it. And there's going to be some more smaller conventions going on the next 3, 4, 5 months. But also the virtual aspect of it, it kind of besides having an additional way to meet, meet one of the wrestlers, it also allows access to a lot of names that wouldn't be overseas otherwise. So I think
Yeah,
you talk
for
about
sure.
Tatanka being over there and Sting and Undertaker and Bret Hart, those guys, they'll be all over the world until, their time has passed. But, maybe like a Sam Houston, a Black Bart, Austin Idol, who I see is right back there.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not able to come overseas. So I think this is pretty cool too, in that it's a way to bring maybe a more extensive collection of talent, into everyone's living room. In your case, onto your bookcase back there, your display case. So, yeah, I dig this a lot. It's different too. The setup is there's a lot less setup up front, but a lot more work on the back end. So for the convention
Mm.
scene, the setup is all the work is getting there early, setting up the table, and then you pack up, and then to some extent your work's done. With the virtual, I have all the photos there, but the hard work is that organizing, invoicing, shipping out. So, but I'm having a great time with the virtuals. I think I can safely say, even when things start to go back to normal, I'll be I'll have the virtual signings. You know, because I'm having so much fun doing them. I've been getting such a good response. Until something changes, it's not going to slow down or stop on my end. I'll kind of add the public signings in between the virtuals. That's the way I look at
Yeah, and you're they are really fun. Like you're a really good host on it, and
it.
like you were saying, even with the questions and stuff, like you're really good at getting those in at the right moments, and yeah, you're really good at making them fun. Like, so everybody check out Captain's Corner
Thank you, Joe.
on Facebook, and so you. And plus, there's like the guests you were talking about there and everything, like the Austin Idols, Sam Houston's, and everything.
Sure.
There is actually such a big market for that then as well, like that maybe people kind of overlook, because that scene was so big. The
Sure.
territory scene was so big back in the day. Like WWE is the juggernaut that it is now and everything, but like there is a massive desire for guys from that era. So
Mhm.
it's awesome to have that this outlet for it. Like,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I've always been a completist in a sense. So I have there's items that I collect. I have posters and programs and things that when I bring guys in, sometimes I'm so swamped I forget my own stuff, or I don't and I never prioritize my own items. But there's some times that if I have an Austin Idol in, he's the last signature I need on something. I'm excited to get him on something,
yeah.
because there's so many talented wrestlers out there. I mean, if you just think about it, just from the territory system alone, at one point in this country, there was, 30, 35 different territories that all had, between 15 to 20 or sometimes more active wrestlers on it, and that didn't count what was going on in Japan or England and Mexico, So, I mean, there were so many wrestlers, different wrestlers that were full time at one point, and, it wasn't just whoever was on Vince's TV. So I kind of try to balance because I still love that 1987 to 1992. That's one of my favorite eras of WWF. I love that era. We can go 85 to 87 and then, 88 to 92, however you want to, categorize it. So I love
Yeah.
working with those guys, but I like bringing in my guys from world class like Eric Embry, Al Perez, Brian Diaz, guys like that. And those guys will probably be coming up soon at some point on virtual signings with me. So, yeah, it's good. It's kind of just like variety's the spice of life. So I like kind of having a bunch of different items in my pantry.
Talk about that actually. Some of your kind of holy grail kind of
Mhm.
pieces in your own personal collection.
Yeah. So I got a WrestleMania 8 poster that's signed by. So it was Hogan versus Sid and then Flair versus Macho. So it's signed by Sid, Flair, and I got most of the guys on the undercard. I don't have Macho. I need Hogan and about 2 or 3 other guys. So that's one of my big pieces.
Wow.
I've got a trying to think. I've got a Wrestle War '91 poster that was signed by Barry, because it was a War Games. So
Yeah.
it was Flair, Barry, Sid, and Arn, but I think Arn was replaced against the Steiners, Sting, and I think Flying Brian, if I remember right. So it's signed
Yeah.
by Sting, Flair, and I got the 3 guys in the posters though, all in their military gear, is Arn, Sid, and Barry. So I got all 3 of them. That's another, and these are the authentic posters. They're not like replicas or anything like that. So those 2 of my favorite pieces. And then like I have lots of programs. So I have a bunch of AWA and NWA, like when they combine for Pro Wrestling USA, and there's guys like Jimmy Valiant in the opening match. There's one of the shows from February '85. The opening match, if I remember right, is Jimmy Valiant and the Youngbloods against like Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, and Terry Funk. Which that was the first of 9 matches. That shows you how much talent there was on the card. That was the first match. So
Yeah.
that's a program where I have like 20 something names. I only need a few names left on there. And then I've got all my sort of 8x10s, and I don't figures I used to collect. Now I've kind of calmed it down, just for space purposes, because I have so much inventory that I have to kind of navigate. But yeah, those are a couple of my holy grail pieces, and I've got a bunch of world class programs from like the '80s that maybe need only 1 or 2 names on. Like I might need Kevin Von Erich as like the only guy on some of the world class programs I have. But yeah, I love collecting programs and posters. That's my vice.
Yeah, world class ones. Like that's one thing. Like I've over kind of the last year, especially with the virtuals as well. I've become a big fan of world class. I love looking back on that. I'd never watched that much of it before, but like with the network and YouTube and everything, it's so much more accessible. And like
So
looking
good.
at oh man, it was red hot,
Oh, God.
like
Absolutely.
and the talent, like with Mid South as well, like it seemed kind of almost interchangeable, like a lot of the talent would swing either way, like they'd come a lot of them would kind of come through those territories. But gosh, that just the atmosphere in those places was absolutely amazing, especially world class, like the Von Erichs, like when sorry.
No, I was going to say the Von Erichs were as popular in that area of the country as anyone's ever been any other part of the country. They were so hot, like you said, that feud with the Freebirds. And then my personal favorite, actually, Gino Hernandez is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Initially where I learned about him is because my dad's name was Gino. And, it's not a common name, especially over here. So then I started learning about him, like, wow, this guy, such an interesting story. And then I was a tape trader as a kid. So I was able to get in some world class from 85, 86 and see all the stuff with him and Chris Adams or Von Erichs and the big feud that was going to happen between him and Chris Adams after the turn. And just such a good heel. God, if he ever went to WWF or, Jim Crockett Promotions and had like a national audience, woo, he would have been huge. But, didn't happen. But yeah, that's one of my favorite eras too, the world class, the Von Erich Freebirds, Von Erichs dynamic duo.
Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. Actually, Kerry Von Erich is actually one of my bucket list autographs to get. Like he's obviously very very rare one. So like I really hope to get one of his one day. Like it's very very rare, but
super rare. If I see one that I come across, I'll give you a heads up on. I've seen a couple, but the problem is lots of times it's personalized, so it'd be to Adam or to Jim, and but I've seen some good ones that way, but it's one of those things where it might be in pen, it might be an early faded marker, nothing like what we have now with all these cool color paint pens and all these various Sharpies, metallic or otherwise. So, but no, I carry autographs on my wall list too, but I'll keep you posted too. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Cheers. But talk about like you alluded to it earlier, kind of like the fact that you don't watch it that much anymore. Like for me, like it's just so ingrained in me, I can't stop.
Yeah.
But I think in the last couple of years, there's kind of good, there's good and there's bad. Like there's a lot of talent there. I kind of watch more from the standpoint of like, I just like getting the good matches here and there. Like I can
Mhm,
kind of sift through some of the
mhm,
nonsense that is on it to see the
mhm,
good matches. Like I thought WrestleMania this last weekend was excellent. Like Lashley, McIntyre. I'm kind of
mhm,
liking that a lot of the bigger than life guys are starting to kind of make a comeback and stuff like
mhm.
that. But kind of talk about your kind of likes and dislikes in regards to wrestling.
Well, so the reason I stopped in watching, because I was a weekly watcher until 2012, 2013. And at some point, because I had my first child, and, I was with my wife at the time. I'm still with my wife now, but, we were together, we were raising the baby. I
Mm.
had a full-time job. I was catching everything on DVR. And what I was finding out was that if I was taping Raw and then watching SmackDown right afterwards when I had time, it felt like the same show. So like this is
Yeah.
before like the brand split. Well, this is after the initial brand split, before they started doing the brand split again. So it just felt like it was. I think I stopped watching SmackDown, and then after a year, Raw just wasn't entertaining for me. I felt like all the shows seemed formulaic. There weren't too many storylines or angles that really got me hooked.
Yeah.
It wasn't really interesting. So then I stopped watching it. It got to the point where now I watch. I haven't watched WrestleMania in about 3 or 4 years. Uh,
Wow.
and anything, it's go crazy. Uh, the one thing I do watch every year is the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble,
Oh,
I always have a sweet spot for. So yeah, I used to actually when the world was a little more open, I was throwing Royal Rumble parties at Hooters restaurant, a sports bar up in my area of the country. So I bring Road Warrior Animal in, Bob Orton, Marty Jannetty, Tito Santana, and we'd have a Royal Rumble party. And it was pretty cool because you have 60, 75 people, 100 people at the restaurant, and everyone's watching the Royal Rumble, and it felt like you were there because the audio's on full blast. You have one big TV and a lot of smaller TVs, and then you're watching with Road Warrior Animal or Bob Orton when Randy's in the main event. So I mean, it brought a new element of something to that. But yeah, so besides the Rumble, I was watching AEW. One of my friends growing up, Angel Ortiz. Shout out to Angel. He was in LAX at the time. I know he's with Jericho now. I started watching that about a year and a half ago, and I stopped watching that during the pandemic, and I stopped watching that only because it felt so weird without crowds there.
mm.
It felt like just almost like a play, but a play without an audience. I didn't, and I really wasn't into it. So I hope Angel's still doing good. I haven't talked to him in a couple of months now, but I keep up with things because the majority of the people I talk to on a regular basis are people in the business, around the business, or fans of the business. So
Yeah.
I mean, you hear things. So I know a lot of people were happy Lashley won the big belt, right?
Yeah. For
And
sure. Yeah, that was a big thing.
And I know Uha Nation beat Biggie and Bianca Belair beat Sasha. So I know the results. I just haven't seen. I probably only seen maybe 2 or 3 Bianca Belair matches tops. And it might have been just stuff. Like when she won the Rumble. That was probably the longest I've seen her. But maybe some NXT matches from 5 or 6 years ago. That someone may have shown me. So I keep up with the new stuff, but it doesn't catch me the same way that like I did as a kid and as a teenager. I was a huge fan of the Attitude Era too. I was fortunate that I was a teenager in 97, 98, 99 when, Austin and The Rock were hot and the NWO was hot. And, I know you said you saw WCW in 99. So that sweet spot right there, wrestling was so big.
Oh
And,
yeah.
I think it seems like there's always a big boom. Like there was that big boom with Hogan and Mr. T and Piper. There was the big boom with Rock and NWO and Austin. There's got to be another big boom coming up. I don't know when. And maybe when that happens, something will make me want to follow weekly again. But until then, I hear stuff or I read stuff going through someone's Facebook feed. But, not a lot of direct watching on my.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's kind of like in comparison to yesteryear, like it isn't. I think an issue with it now as well is the fact that the business is so open now. you know, that little bit of magic has been kind of taken away from it
Yep.
because of that, like, you know. But I think every so often there's matches that kind of how would you say, that kind of override that, like
Sure.
like Lashley and McIntyre. Like, I was into that now at WrestleMania as much as I was, you know, Taker and, you know, Kane back in the day, or, you know, something like that, Taker, Yokozuna, whatever the case may be, you know. So every so often, I think Randy Orton's been brilliant over the last year. He's done some amazing work. So it's worth. I'd recommend tuning into WrestleMania. I'd recommend watching WrestleMania. It was very, very good. Now, to be
you have another suggestion besides Drew and Bobby Lashley? Is there one more match I should check out? Because I probably will go back and watch a match or two. Probably not the whole show, especially since it's 2 nights. But
I'll there's a lot of hours there for sure. Lashley McIntyre was excellent, and Riddle Sheamus was actually one that, like, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of build for it or anything, but it's a hard hitting, you know, it's a war, like, you know, that's a really good one. And what's the other one that was really good? Oh man, dang, I'm brutal on the spot. There was another match on night 1 that was really good. Actually, Shane McMahon and Braun Strowman, the cage match they had, that was quite good actually as well. But the one I would really recommend is Sheamus and Lashley. I really, really like that. I really like McIntyre's work. He reminds me of he actually reminds me of Brian Clark from back in the day. Like, you know, really athletic, really snug, like, you know,
with the long hair, the big boots. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
exactly. Like, yeah. So, he's a throwback. Like, you know, he's very good, I think, and I really like Lashley as well. He's got that bigger than life vibe, like, you know. So he's he's definitely one to watch as well. But
those are 2 guys I was big fans of. You know, when I was watching, like Drew McIntyre when he was doing the Chosen One character in, you know, 2009 or 10, 11, whenever that was, I knew, I'm like, this guy is going to be a WrestleMania headliner. And then I was fortunate in that I was able to watch him in person on a bunch of independent shows on his runs in between the WWE. And same thing. So I was so happy, you know, when he was getting his big push. And same thing with Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley, 15 years ago, looked like he was going to become the face of the WWE. Like, I remember he had a great match, bunch of great matches with Umaga. He had a really good pay-per-view match with John Cena. Yeah, so
I love that as well.
Yeah, that's something I will check out on your recommendation, Jonathan.
Yeah, and it's the very first match of night 1 as well, so it's a handy one to catch.
Easy,
like, you know.
easy. I press play, and then my obligations are done afterwards. Awesome.
But talk about a kind of an interesting hypothetical. Like, you know, I mean, there's so many wrestlers that aren't around anymore, and like a lot of them went at a young age and everything, unfortunately. But talk about one kind of the one dream one that you never got a chance to have on a virtual or a signing that you most would have liked to have gotten on.
Well, if I'll give you an answer besides these 2, but we named them both already: Gino Hernandez and Kerry Von Erich. They like Gino Hernandez is my favorite wrestler of all time. Kerry Von Erich has got to be top 5. So I would say those 2, but besides those, I was also a huge fan of Dusty Rhodes. So Dusty Rhodes on one of the virtuals would have been amazing, with his gift of gab, and, you know, he's so imitated, but that's just because he was such a larger than life character. Like, you know, he had so many great catchphrases and his style of promo, and, you know, and that's before all his accomplishments in the ring, and, you know, even creatively as a booker. So Dusty would have been right up there. But yeah, Kerry Von Erich, Gino Hernandez, and Dusty Rhodes. I would say of 3 guys that have passed, would probably be my top 3 that I wish I could have had on virtual.
Good choices. All really good choices. Gosh, they were absolutely awesome. But just before we sign off, tell everybody one more time about all the signings you got coming up, and how they can catch it.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you once again for having me on for the last 40 minutes or so, Jonathan. And I've had a great time talking to you. We've talked on DM all the time, but, you know, it's always good having the extended conversation and the face-to-face. I know we've done it before, but, you know, it gives it, you know, a different feel. So
absolutely,
But yeah, this week is stacked with signings. Now everything will be able to be followed right on the Captain's Corner feed on Facebook. So they'll be able to search Captain's Corner, and I probably have a picture of Charlie Norris as my main icon right now. But that's because Charlie Norris is one of the 7 guests I'll have over the next week plus. Got Charlie Norris tomorrow night, Thursday night at 7 p.m. Scott McGee, Friday night, 7 p.m. Native American legend Tatanka, 6 p.m. on Saturday. 8 p.m. on Saturday is Manny Fernandez. So that's a lot for 1 week. But, we got 4 in a row. And the next week, we kick off that week with Scott Casey. We're doing a One Last Ride book signing, which I'm so excited for. I get excited for all my virtual signings, but this one's going to be special because me and Scott are connected, forever with this book. So that's going to be something where, normally I don't invite friends and family always to like the virtual signings, but for that one, I'll be inviting friends and family to check it out, where they can learn about Scott, or even the ones that, haven't been able to check out the book so far. I'll be able to get it signed personally to Scott, from Scott to them, and I'll write a note, although my handwriting is very suspect. So I don't recommend too much of my handwriting. But yeah, and then we got NWO Sting, who we talked about earlier, and I got to go back and look at that little run in. NWO Sting, Friday the 23rd, and then Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin, the 24th of Saturday, and then we close the month down with Demolition Smash, Crusher Khrushchev on April 29th. And then I take a 2-week break, 2-week vacation. So I'm on holiday for 2 weeks. So
a well-earned one, man. You've been working hard, and
cheers to the working man. Yeah.
Cheers to the working man. That's it, man. Yeah, no, it's been absolutely awesome having you on, man. It's been great chatting, and everybody check all that stuff out on Captain's Corner Facebook page. I'll post the link to the page in the description of the video as well, and so everybody check that out. Support Captain's Corner, and yeah, man, it's been great. Thanks so much for coming on, my friend.
It's been an honor. I had so much fun, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into Pro Wrestling Defined on YouTube. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel to keep up with all future content. And please follow Pro Wrestling Defined on Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook.